Hope you've fully refreshed after lunch. So I'm going to get underway, otherwise it won't fit in the session. So you may be wondering why I'm here giving this talk. I wasn't actually going to present this at all. I had a dozen other talks that I was going to present for Expo, but I was basically instructed by the crowd of public opinion, this should be the talk I should give. This would be the more interesting one than my usual talks on science and philosophy and so on. So basically this is just a story of what happened to me earlier on this year. So I thought I'd start with the key players in the talk because you need the background of who are the key players. So starting on the top left, Emerson is our 23-year-old son. So Emerson is an artist. You may see he spends most of his time putting his art on his clothing rather than on the canvas. I've got an example of some of his art, the very last slide, to give you an idea. So he's at Curtin here, doing a fine arts degree. He lives in a flat about 700-800 metres from our house. And it so happened on the night he was over, he had dinner with us, and we were watching TV together. Now, Finlay is a rugby player, you may have guessed. He's studying physiotherapy here at Curtin, and he's hoping to go from physiotherapy into medicine. Now, he's a bit of a party boy. His day consists of getting up out of bed about 12, doing a little bit of uni work, an hour or two, and then going out partying and getting home about 2 or 3 in the morning. So he wasn't actually there when things were transpiring. Now, Genevieve is also at Curtin University. She's doing journalism. She's in her final year of journalism. Now, as events would have it, if you're going to have a crisis, then you want Genevieve around because out of all of them, she's probably the most reliable and can respond without losing it. Now, Emmanuelle, our youngest, she's doing nursing. She's studying enrolled nursing. She's just did a final year of school. She's doing a TAFE preparation for enrolled nursing, so she'll be studying nursing the next couple of years. Now, if you really have a medical crisis, you don't want an enrolled nurse student to intervene because as the story will unfold, it's probably the one that you can't rely on. And Catherine, my wife, 28 years, coming up 29, I think we're heading to. Now, look, you'd think after 28 years, the one time you need her, she'd be there to save your life. But she'd actually gone away for the weekend with her girlfriend, so she was down at Margaret River. Not through any planning or design, that was just how it transpired. Obviously couldn't anticipate what I was going to get up to while she was out. So those are the key players. And then you might be wondering about me. So I graduated a vet in 1984 and I set up the Ocean Reef Vet Clinic in 1990. So for the last 27, 28 years I've been running that practice. I wasn't living the dream, I think I was living in a dream. My dream was that I was fit and well. I was fit and healthy. I cycle a lot. I've cycled up Mount Hotham 3 times. I've done Bay in the Day twice. I've cycled all of the Victorian Alps, Mount Buffalo 4 times, Falls Creek. So, I can cover a bit of ground on a bike. I thought I was pretty fit, low resting heart rate, good blood pressure, all that sort of stuff. Recently donated blood. So I think my last donation was just before, probably about a month before. And I've been donating since I was 18. And that's a key fact to know. My body is very used to having, a fifth of its blood disappear in a few minutes. So I was quite adjusted to that. Also been attending the School of Philosophy since 1995. I learnt meditation in 1991. So I've got about 30 years of meditation practice under my belt. So that's another key factor there. I thought I was fit. I thought I was healthy. I've donated a lot of blood and I practice meditation. That's sort of where I was at until suddenly. Now, the most important thing I think to point out is when a crisis happens to you, you will ignore all the symptoms. This will happen to each and every one of us, and the first thing that comes up is denial. You will be utterly convinced, first of all, it's not happening to you. If it is happening to you, you will have an explanation for every symptom. You will. You'll have a brilliant explanation for every symptom. So for me, I'm sitting in a chair on a couch watching a movie that Emerson had downloaded. So the two of us were sitting side by side, and I started feeling really painful in my arm. I thought, oh, what have I done to this? And I started thinking of my old rugby years, and I dislocated this shoulder, and I thought, oh yeah, the old arthritis is playing up, you know, a bit of numbness, a bit of tingling, that sort of thing. And I couldn't get my arm comfortable, no matter where I did it. I was trying to identify the pain, you know, why is it aching, why is it hurting, all of this sort of thing. A lot of discomfort in my abdomen. And I convinced myself, Genevieve, well, she's, if you remember the Vicar of Dibley, there was a Mrs. Cropley character in there. So Genevieve's not the best cook. And she'd made a heap of pikelets for us. And I'm a bit of a pikelet fan, and I pigged out a little bit on them. I probably hadn't done Veronica's mindful eating, and I'd eaten a bit too many pancakes. So again, I had another explanation for the symptom. I'd eaten too much, I was a bit of a guts. Genevieve's probably overdone the bicarb soda, you know. I felt a bit gassy, a bit bloated, a little bit sweaty, a little bit nauseous. And so for every symptom I had here, oh, this is a heart attack. Classic, you must be having a heart attack. Because I had all of the symptoms, but I had a brilliant explanation for every one. And being scientific and analytical, I was sitting there analysing these symptoms. You know, oh yeah, what's going on here? Oh yeah, how's my pulse going? All of this sort of thing. And I decided, I'd convinced myself, and my mind locked onto it, was indigestion. I'd overeaten too much, I was a bit gassy, I was starting to feel a bit nauseous. And normally, when you're a little bit nauseous, if you vomit, you feel relief. So I had a couple of vomits, but the thing is, everything got worse after I was vomiting. I thought, oh, this is a bit odd. I should be getting better, but I was getting worse. But nevertheless, I was still locked in, and it was in my mind, indigestion, you'll be right, sleep it off, all of that sort of thing. So, you know, scrambling around for a bit of Panadol, tried to look for a bit of Buscopan, something to deal with the pain. And I thought, okay, it's uncomfortable, I'll manage it, it'll be right, no problem. And anyway, so Emerson and I were joking, oh, he's having a heart attack. And I said, no, it's not a heart attack, you know. I checked it all out, it's not a heart attack, I'll be right. And I didn't have any sort of stabbing pain right in here. What it was my diaphragm was excruciating, and I couldn't draw breath in. It's an incredible suffocating feeling when you can't move your diaphragm and you can't actually breathe in. There was just no way of taking air in. So I was getting like that. And anyway, so the two girls, you know, Genevieve and Manny, they're all, oh, you know, Dad's having a heart attack. So, it's all right, no problem, I got this, it's indigestion, don't worry about it. So I thought, if I just wait it out, just sleep it off, it'll be fine, I'll get over it. And there's probably a little side story to that. One of my brothers-in-law had a propensity for eating too much, and he hoed into porky pies, these pork pies one day, hit the deli a bit hard, and he needed an ambulance for bloating and indigestion. And I thought, there's no way in the world I'm going to ring an ambulance for indigestion. See what I mean about how the mind can lock in on one explanation and you can't shift it. So anyway, the symptoms got worse. I decided to go to bed, and then it slowly dawned on me, hang on, this is not going well. I couldn't get comfortable. Lying down was terrible, so I thought, oh, I'll lie on my tummy. I'll try the old baby with the colic, you know, like that. And I thought, hang on. You know, I was still convinced I was bloating, that I was full of gas, because the pain was now total global abdominal pain and difficulty breathing. And then, even though I had the phone near the bed, it didn't occur to me that I should ring. I thought, okay, I probably should go and get Genevieve or get one of the others. Meanwhile, Emerson had gone home to his flat. He'd left because I wasn't going to watch the movie with him, so he thought no point in hanging around. So that was when the trouble started. So I couldn't stand up. And I realised as soon as I raised my head, I went lightheaded and okay, I'm going to go unconscious here. And that's a crisis because teenagers don't get out of bed till lunchtime. And I thought, okay, do I really want to be lying here unconscious for 14 hours? This is going to be a problem. So I was now only on hands and knees, sort of commando crawl. And if I raised my head that much, I'd black out. And so I thought, I've got to get from our room to Genevieve's room, which was probably, it'd be nearly 20 metres, something like that. And I reckon that took me best part of about 15 minutes because I was just going like this and I'd sort of black out as soon as my head came up a little bit, and I couldn't breathe. I was open mouth, panting like a dog, trying to get just a gasp of air, and the whole time feeling that you're suffocating. Anyway, so I managed to get to Genevieve's room, and I couldn't speak because, and that's why I didn't use the phone because I wouldn't have been able to do anything, make any noise other than pant. So I thought, right, well, her door was shut. And I couldn't get up off the floor, and I was on the ground, and I couldn't speak. So the only thing I could do was bang my head against her door, because that was the only thing I had left. I was going, Jan, trying to get some noise coming out. Now, of course, Genevieve was convinced it was Emerson or one of the others annoying her. So her response was, piss off. Stop worrying me, like, go away, And then it was only with this persistent, and head banging that she managed to open the door. And then, of course, she jumped into action straight away and she grabbed her phone and dialed 000. She then called out to Emmanuel, yelled and screamed for Emmanuel to come. Now, Emmanuel came and immediately fell apart, burst into tears and couldn't do anything. So that's what I mean, she needs a few more years of training before she's going to save lives. So then Emmanuel managed to ring Emerson, who was now at his flat just around the corner, and all she managed to say was, Dad. Okay, so Emerson got the call. Emmanuel's crying. She's managed to say the words Dad, and Emerson's going, okay, that's it, Dad's dead. Okay, and so he's running from his flat, all with his in mind. Okay, well, it won't be so bad, and he's already working his way through the will, wondering what he's going to end up with. Just sorting out the logistics of, zip up the body bag. So anyway, so he arrived, the ambulance arrived, and meanwhile, Finlay Party Boy, he arrived home at the same time as well. So this was about 11:30. So for those of you interested in stats, this is what the paramedics measured. So normally my blood pressure is around 110 over 60, 110 over 80. They couldn't register any blood pressure at all. My whole right side had no detectable pulse, and they could get just a smidgen of a pulse in my left carotid artery and nothing else anywhere else. When Genevieve was talking to the 000 and she was measuring my heart rate, it was 24. And my respiration rate, I was just trying to stay alive at about 100 plus a minute, a bit like that, and my body temperature had dropped. So those were the stats when the ambulance was there. And so the paramedics, they're pretty clued up. I couldn't lie down. It was too painful to lie down. I was lucid through all of this, so they managed to get me sitting upright in a chair, and that was the only position where I could actually get some air in. And as I said, I was chatting to the one who was working on me, and the driver was driving, so he was off to Charlie's. Now, we're about 7 or 8 minutes from Charlie Gardner's, so we got there in pretty good time. And I heard them radio ahead. They said, AAA dissection, priority 1, get everything organised. And this is great. I'm there the whole time thinking, wow, this is really cool. Like, I'm going to be straight in. No 4-hour wait for me. I thought it was actually all really interesting. So I'm sort of doing my symptoms, I'm on oxygen, and they're giving me fentanyl, which is sort of a super morphine. It was really quite painful, but at the same time, I really couldn't have cared less about the pain. The pain is only global if you focus on it. I was more curious about what was going on, so that was what I was focusing on. I was analysing, where's it coming from? And I was running through my diagnostic tree and I was thinking, is this gallstones? Maybe I'm passing a gallstone. Maybe I've got a kidney stone. Maybe that's what it is, because it was all abdominal. Pancreatitis? Yeah, I've had vomiting, got cramps, So I was running through all of the abdominal organs that could be playing up and the things that could contribute to the symptoms and what I was aware of the symptoms are. And that was my journey in the ambulance. It was all like, great, okay, this is good. So we get to the ER room. It never occurred to me, and this is the point, Hollywood has this idea, something's going on. That's it, we're all going to die. It's a complete furphy. It never occurred to me for 1 second that my life was in danger. That thought was not there. Now, I understand biology, and as a vet, I deal with this sort of thing every day, especially crisis. But it wasn't happening to me. I was watching this, sort of curiously unfold in front of me. To me, it was all just sort of a secondary event. So straight in, priority one. The great thing about priority one, no waiting. Ambulance pulls up, doors open, boom, straight in. 15 people, And they literally did the scissors, closed straight off, scissored off, and IVs in every vein they could find, oxygen, and they were hitting me with what's called hydromorphone, which is a strong painkiller. I still couldn't talk to them. I was aware fully of everything that was going on, but my focus was actually just breathing. There was no way I could speak. I was, sorry, I'm down in a minute, but for now I'm going to breathe. And so they hit me with everything. They gave me about 6 litres in the first 20 minutes or so, 2 litres of blood and 4 litres of plasma. And then they were sort of thinking, now AAA dissection means abdominal aortic aneurysm. So abdominal aortic aneurysm is they suspected that my aorta had burst. So that's what they were looking for. Had x-rays in the ER, in the chair, and then they're still trying to work out what's going on. So then they rushed me into for a CAT scan. And this was just after they'd stabilised me and figured that I was probably going to be okay for the next few minutes. Meanwhile, the 4 kids had arrived and they were ushered into a side waiting room. Now, we found out later that the side waiting room is sort of the grieving room. This is where they put the family when they're going to walk in and say, I'm sorry, your father has died. They weren't putting him in a normal waiting area. It was the nice, quiet family grieving room. Now, the kids in there, so Finlay had been at a party. He was a little bit tipsy. They were all speculating like I was, what's he got? Oh, it's not a heart attack, it must be something else. And so they decided it might have been kidney failure or something in the abdomen. And so they had an argument over who was the best kidney donor. So Finlay was deciding that he was probably in the best shape and with the best quality kidney, so he should really be the one to donate his kidney. So that's what they were up to in the side family waiting room. Meanwhile, the ER team, and so there was the surgical team there, they were expecting to have to race me straight into surgery, and the medical team, and there was all people swarming all over me. And the CAT scan showed that I actually had a grade 4 splenic rupture. So my spleen had just simply split in half. It had just burst, and in the space of a few minutes I'd bled out. Now, the only things that sort of kept me going is that I was used to bleeding, being a blood donor, and I was also pretty chill about it all. I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm going to die. It was, wow, this is really interesting. This is really good. And okay, it was quite painful, but the pain was really a side effect. I think if you focus on pain, then yeah, it's global and you can't cope. But when you're curiously interested in everything else, it's actually really it's an incidental. That's the way I saw it anyway. So I was a few hours in the ER, and when they felt I was stable, the modern practice is your spleen is pretty essential, so they were doing everything they could to save my spleen. So then I was moved into the ICU. And the ICU was great. That bed there, this is the top left, the ICU. The bed, wherever you move, it instantly has all these little cells that just sort of fill up and adjust. So you move like that and it goes zzz, and takes the pressure. So it was just like floating. It instantly adjusted so that you had a total body support. And I had to be upright. I couldn't be flat. If I was flat, I couldn't breathe at all. And so I had to be sort of vertical. So I was in there about 4 days, just on oxygen, and they're just supporting my whole system. And everything was fine so long as I didn't move. The slightest movement was unbearable. And the wonderful thing was ketamine. Oh boy, it's good stuff. I recommend it to anyone. Yeah, so I was on what's called hydromorphone ketamine pump, and that was they were always on at my case. The ER people and the ICU people, they're saying, "Come on, you've got to pump a bit more." And I go, "No, it's all right, it's all right. Yeah, no, have a bit more." And the wonderful thing is this dissociative state that ketamine gives you, that everything is witnessed, and you're just watching everything, but you have no participation. It's not happening to you; it's happening with you or around you. It's sort of. And the other thing was the acute sensitivity, really heightened sensitivity. I could hear every conversation in the ICU. And what's more, I was trying to engage myself in conversation with everyone in the ECU. So it'd be a little bit like, look, just one at a time, Just, look, I know you've got a lot of questions, you all want to talk to me, but just one at a time. Like, you're all, you're not making a lot of sense where you're all talking at once. And of course, these were multiple conversations over the whole floor of the hospital, but I was hearing all of them. And so it was quite an interesting time, actually. I wouldn't say it was bad in any way. And the other thing was, I still was not thinking about mortality. Not once. Not once did I think for a second, oh, this is it, your time's up. But, I had been circling the drain there for some hours, and I was within minutes. It was pretty well check-out time if everything hadn't come together right to get into the ER. So that's where I was. And meanwhile, in the morning, they'd managed to get hold of Catherine, and Finlay then drove down to Margaret River to pick her up. So that's where I got to. So what had I done? I'd ruptured my spleen. So the spleen sits right up under this rib cage here, under your left-hand side of your ribs. It's tucked well away, protected by the rib cage, and so it's in against the diaphragm, and it's hidden away out of sight. Now, it's one of the most important organs in the lymphatic system, and it's the thing that controls your resistance to infection. And modern medicine wants to keep your spleen at all costs. If you have your spleen removed, which was the old approach to a splenic rupture, you would have to have about 25, they told me, 25 to 27 vaccinations every year, and you would need to be on antibiotics for the rest of your life. So the alternative to keeping it is quite dire. The splenic capsule, if you can see the shiny coat there, it's tissue thin. It's only a few cells thick, so you can't stitch it. So if the spleen ruptures open, you can't just put it together and put some stitches in. The stitches themselves will create more holes. So it's not a stitchable organ. You can use wound glue and stuff. But in this situation, it was better just leave it alone, lie still, and replace the blood. So what's the spleen do? It maintains the blood and the platelets. It produces antibodies. It's where your immune cells are stored. Keeps the blood clean. It's a blood filter. It also does fluid and electrolyte balance. And it controls the number of circulating blood cells. So the spleen can contract and release lots of cells. And when you're in a relaxed state, it'll absorb them and take them out of circulation. It also removes old red blood cells that are worn out. And it also has a waste cleansing action similar to the kidneys. So that's what it does. And so The medical treatment protocol for me was simply keep me alive and leave it alone. And then all I had to do was absorb all of the blood that had bled out into my abdomen and allow the spleen to heal up. So by this time it had a hematoma, which is a big blood clot about the size of a grapefruit sitting on it, which is about 3 times the size of a normal spleen. So I was in ICU for 4 days. Then I was in what's called the HDU, which is the high dependence unit, for another 5 days to a week. And it was there that I contracted pneumonia. So because I bled out and I had no immune system, I just got a hospital-acquired pneumonia. So that sort of set me back a little bit for that week. And then I had another week in the normal ward, and they sent me home. And take it easy. In the meantime, prior to this, in the months leading up, I'd been thinking about selling my business and a change of lifestyle. This was sort of a precipitating factor. So we'd actually scheduled a business meeting with another vet who was thinking about buying our practice. And in the morning I'd run around, Emerson and Manny had things and I'd been driving them all around everywhere. And I'd had some x-rays done, and then at 2 o'clock I was scheduled to go back to the GP for the follow-up check. Between 12:30 and 2 we were having this business meeting where I was discussing with another vet who was thinking of buying my business. And I was sort of a little bit uncomfortable, not eating very well and having trouble breathing. Whilst what I didn't realise was that I actually now had a collapsed lung, which is a pleural effusion where all the blood in the abdomen and the inflammation has now filled up my lungs with blood. So now I was back in the ER again, and I had another week, 10 days in there to recover from this. So there was a few things conspiring, I think, and I had a long recovery period. So the long recovery period was basically sit still, don't do anything, don't lift, don't get your blood pressure up, don't go running, all of this sort of thing. And so this was basically for most of June and July. Take it easy, which I think I was pretty good at. Lying around is something I can manage. Sitting on a couch I can manage. So that wasn't really an issue. So I managed to recover from that. But in that time, I had a lot of time to think about the nature of things, nature of reality, all of that sort of thing, the big questions. And this is one of the verses that really came to mind for me. So this is White Ashes. Now, it's a Zen letter, Zen poem, and it's a recent translation, Hisazo Inagaki. When I deeply contemplate the transient nature of human life, I realise that from beginning to end, life is impermanent like an illusion. We have not yet heard of anyone who lived 10,000 years. How fleeting is a lifetime? This world today can maintain a human form for even 100 years. There is no knowing whether I will die first or others, or whether death will occur today or tomorrow. We depart one after another more quickly than the dewdrops on the roots or the tips of the blades of grasses. So it is said. Hence we may have radiant faces in the morning, but by evening we may turn into white ashes. Once the winds of impermanence have blown, our eyes are instantly closed and our breath stops forever. Then our radiant face changes its colour, and the attractive countenance like peach and plum blossoms is lost. Family and relatives will gather and grieve, but all to no avail. Since there is nothing else that can be done, they carry the deceased out to the fields, and then what is left after the body has been cremated and is turned into the midnight smoke is just white ashes. Words fail to describe the sadness of it all. Thus, the ephemeral nature of human existence is such that death comes to young and old alike without discrimination. So we should all quickly take to the heart of the matter of the greatest importance of the afterlife, entrust ourselves deeply to Amida Buddha, and recite the Nembutsu, humbly and respectfully. So that's what I was contemplating, this transient nature and this You think you've got it all under control. You eat well, you drink well, you meditate, you do fitness, all of that sort of thing. And in reality, what happened to me was totally random, totally out of the blue. Nothing to do with my control. And the lovely analogy I think of is that you're in the back seat and you've got this little steering wheel and you're turning it, and sometimes the car goes that way and you're turning it, and sometimes the car goes that way. But all you're really doing is just spinning this little toy wheel and making brum brum noises. That's what I think we're doing when we're alive. So there's other forces at work than your individual efforts. So I've been forced to face this mortality. But again, from start to finish through that experience, it never occurred to me that I was about to die. It wasn't like, oh my God, this is it, time's up, I'm going to die. Even though it's obvious the body is mortal, and even though I know that implicitly that this body will die, it never occurred that it was going to happen to me. It was really quite surreal. And you could say that I really enjoyed the experience. It's actually quite fun to be the centre of attention. You know, all these people fussing around and, you know, all these visitors coming in and carrying on about how they like you. You know, really? Me? You know? And also, when I was asked to rate the pain out of 10, so that every few minutes they're going, how would you rate the pain out of 10? And I'm going, what a nonsense question. How do I know what a 10 is? You know, so first thing in my mind would go, okay, now if I was on the rack, you know, and they were turning it and being twisted, and then they were flailing the skin off my body, that'd be pretty bad. That'd probably be a 10. And so I was trying to think of all the tortures that would actually be a 10, and then trying to work out, well, where was I sitting at that moment on a 10? So I couldn't actually ever rate it as a 10. It was probably pretty unbearable and impossible to deal with, but yeah, you're not going to give it a 10. Like, a 10 is you're incapable of answering the question or even contemplating it. So, you know, so the most I could ever carry on about the pain was, oh, you know, it's a 7 or 8, but hey, why are you asking? Who cares? And I could always think of something worse. And the other thing that meditation gives you is a sense of separation. Some of you might have been with Anthony's talk about detachment. You do get a sort of a sense of detachment, this idea, yeah, it's a body, yeah, it's useful, but it's sort of like it's your car. You know, you look after it, put the right fuel in it and so on, and take it for a drive every now and again, but it's really not you. So you can be quite indifferent about the body. And pain, you know, pain. Okay, so the body hurts, so it hurts through here, but where am I perceiving the pain? Am I perceiving the pain here? Or is the pain a mental attitude to it? Or is it mind only? Is pain sort of like, I don't like this? I was analysing the pain. Was it really unbearable? How was I experiencing the sensation of the pain? Where does pain sit on the level of consciousness? And the interesting thing was, it wasn't any big deal. No matter how intense it was, you could always have this sense of, wow, look at that pain. That's really strong, but, you know, how is it I'm perceiving it as strong? And why is, you know, hitting your thumb with a hammer sort of weak pain, and this is a strong pain? Like, where is the scale of pain perception, and how is it you perceive pain? To me, that was really fascinating. And it was really great to be able to sort of graduate the perception of pain. Where is the pain when the mind is altered? So, you know, ketamine and the hydromorphine, the stuff they were pumping into me, alters your perception. So I was having conversations with the ER physicians, and I was convinced that I would get better quicker if they used my spare liver, which made perfect sense to me. They didn't take up that advice, and I still don't know why. But so things that you believe, and so we all have sort of quaint little beliefs. But this was an experience where some of my beliefs were really quite odd. They obviously delusions, hallucinations, and yet I find some of the things I probably deeply hold dear are probably hallucinations as well, delusions. The nature of the perception of things was what was fascinating to me. And if my mind is altered, where is the perception of pain? So this is another verse that came to mind. What is death? What is it that dies? And it's Swami Vivekananda. Now, he was a meditation teacher in the early 20th century, 1930s. There is something in us which is free and permanent, but it is not the body, neither is it mind. The body is dying every minute. The mind is constantly changing. The body is a combination, and so is the mind, and as such can never reach a state beyond all change. But beyond this momentary sheathing of gross matter, beyond even the finer covering of the mind, is the Atman, the true self of man, the permanent, the ever-free. It is his freedom that is percolating through the layers of thought and matter, and in spite of the colourings of name and form, is ever asserting its unshackled existence. It is his deathlessness, his bliss, his peace, his divinity that shines out and makes itself felt in spite of the thickest layers of ignorance. He is the real man, the fearless one, the deathless one, the free. This being, this Atman, this real self of man, the free, the unchangeable, is beyond all conditions, and as such has neither birth nor death. Without birth or death, eternal, ever existing is the soul of man. The understanding of this is experiential. You can't get to it by intellectualizing it. But when the experience is happening to you, you get a real sense of this deep witnessing awareness. Just peace. And whatever is taking place is really quite fascinating and quite curious. And so long as you're attached or connected with that witnessing awareness, whatever is taking place is actually quite fun. You can be bleeding to death and it's actually, oh, okay, yeah, oh, so this is what I'm doing now. Okay. Can be excruciating pain. You can go, oh, yeah, oh, how am I perceiving this pain? Like, what is pain perception? Like, how is it I'm aware of this sensation? See, if you're a mechanical being, if you actually really believe that you're just matter, that you're just organic matter, there is no necessity for consciousness. If you're a mechanical being, it's not there. It's not necessary. You can just eat, drink, sleep, be merry. That's it. You don't have to know that it's happening. There's no necessity for knowing that something is taking place for it to take place. So this is an extra thing. So it's not just that the body perceives pain, it's that you're aware of the pain. That's the real deal. And when you attach to that witnessing the analysis of the pain, it's not pain anymore. It's actually just another fascinating event, another input. Curious thing. So you can get an experiential understanding of this when it happens to you, but you can't intellectualize it. So as I contemplated the experience, I had to admit to myself that I really had no fear of death at all. Experientially, I have no fear of death whatsoever. I can work myself up into a lather about thinking about dying and all the stuff you miss, but that's not experiential. That's just the mind getting away with itself. So at the experiential level, I was happy, content, fearless, and unconcerned with the fate. We're talking about fate or fatality. There were so many things that had to come together for me to be here speaking to you now. It's ridiculous. For example, what I didn't tell you, that occurred on a Friday night, but from Monday to Thursday I was down in Albany bushwalking on my own. So if it had happened a few hours earlier, that was it, all over Red Rover, corpse in the bush. Even me coming to the realisation that I should actually seek help. That was just, there was a couple of neurons there that said, hang on a minute, this isn't going away, time to seek help. And I just had enough presence of mind to keep my head down so that I didn't black out, so that I could actually get to where Genevieve was. And then, of course, we have to live in a society where we have emergency ER physicians who know what they're doing. So there are so many events that are outside of my control that I have no input into whatsoever. for me to be giving this conversation. So this is a Sufi mystic, and it's very, very poetic. But again, the understanding comes from this at the experiential level. So if you stay with the poetry of it, you can actually get a sense of what's being described. I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and rose to man. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying? Yet once more I shall die as man, to soar with angels blessed. But even from angelhood I must pass on. All except Goth doth perish. When I have sacrificed my angel soul, I shall become what no mind e'er conceived. Oh, let me not exist, for non-existence proclaims in organ tones, to him we shall return. The wonderful thing about the mystics is that they practice these practices of meditation and contemplation until they actually have a direct experience of this, and it's then they try and describe it to you. Now, it's very hard to conceive what he's getting at here, but nevertheless, with some of the practices, especially to do with meditation, you can get a sense of this timelessness. There is an aspect to you which is timeless, but it only works if you, like Anthony was talking about with detachment, if you practice detaching from these little transient things that you get so worked up about. So when we look at each individual constituent element that makes up a human being, we find no element whatsoever that is truly us. You know, if you think of yourself as a pile of Lego building blocks, and there's yellow ones, blue ones, red ones, and whatever, there's not one of those building blocks that is you, or that constitutes you, or makes you. And all of those building blocks are in constant flux with the universe. You can't separate this thing that you call you from the universe. And we'll find a collation, a sort of a temporary accumulation of universal constituent elements. And we think those are us. And then when we look at the mind, we find the mind is just floating experiences. And all we're doing when we read or come to a talk, we're just simply feeding the mind experiences. And so the mind is nothing more than a series of fleeting experiences, glimpses. But you can think of it in another way, that all of this is just content of awareness, content of consciousness. And so it's a bit like this white screen. It doesn't matter what slideshow is played onto the screen, there's always a white screen at the back of it. And so bodily things are just inputs in consciousness, and mental events are just inputs in consciousness. But the underlying, the great field of being is just consciousness or awareness itself. You can get a sense of that. So the big question is there a fear of death? Or, more importantly, do we deeply believe that we're immortal? I don't mean intellectually, but can we connect with this sense that I truly am immortal? So I thought I'd just play this for you. This is filmed with a high-tech drone camera. There's no other way that it could have been recorded. the sort of person to go out and climb a cliff. You know, individually, each of you might not think, I'll go out and climb a cliff. But the reality is, each and every one of us in this room is on a cliff face, and there's only up. When you're free climbing like that with no ropes, no support, you can't climb down. You can only see your hold with your eyes, so you can only go up. So once you commit to a climb like that, 2,500 feet, you either get out at the top or you die. It's all or nothing. The reality is we don't know when we're going to lose our grip. None of us. I'm sure if we lined up, we got everyone in this room, we took a photo, in 5 years you'd be putting a few X's through some of the faces in that photo. I remember one of those comedy shows where you get the death notices out of the paper and you get the phone book and you just cross-check them and put a line through. But to think about it, could you risk everything if you were mortal? If you had one shot at existence and that was it? Doing something like that would be insane. Like you'd wrap yourself in cotton wool and hope, you know, that there were no germs. You'd become one of these sort of hypochondriac germaphobes. And we see that sort of level of hypochondria as quite bizarre as a form of mental illness. And actual risk-taking is actually quite common. This is what Jean-Paul Sartre observed. He said, several hours or several years make no difference once you have lost eternity. So it doesn't matter if you live 100 years. If that's the brief window and that's it, it's meaningless. It has no meaning whatsoever. It's a bit like there's a dark room and you flick the light off and on for a second and you have a quick glimpse of the room and then the light's off again. And there was an eternity of darkness before that and an eternity of darkness after that. This brief window that we call life, it makes no difference if you lose eternity. It can't. Now, risk-taking is not that rare. So you might think that you're not on the cliff edge, but when you're looking at your mobile phone and walking into traffic, you've got plenty of opportunities to lose your grip on that cliff face that you call your life. Are you really sure your next heartbeat is coming? So risk-taking, the big question I would ask, is this ignorant insanity? Or are these guys reflecting something that we intuitively know at a very deep level? If you get one shot at life, that the materialists argue, this brief window, this 80 years and 10, how could you do that? Be insane, absolute insanity. And a few of these guys do die doing this. I think that deep down we don't actually believe we're mortal.
That we're mortal?
Yeah. I think we're told the story that the body ages and dies, and if you're attached to the body, then yeah, it will age and die. But I personally, for me, I have no sensation that this is a temporary phenomenon. None whatsoever. I tried looking for it. Okay, well, this is it. You know that thing that Hollywood has in all the movies? Oh, this is it, we're all doomed. It just isn't there. There's this deeper conviction that it's going to keep going on and on and on. And being in a body is just one manifestation of that conviction. It's the ego that gives us that false belief, I think.
That perspective could change if there was fear.
If there is fear, yeah, fear is a very damaging state of mind, absolutely. But what's fear? When we look back, fear is this body. I want this body to stay permanent. It's when we talk about ignorance, you know, is this ignorance? Ignorance is not a lack of knowledge. Ignorance, the word is to ignore that which we know. Yeah. So we know this body is born and it dies, and in the process it's constantly changing, ever changing. Ignorance is to attach yourself to a particular state. Like I want to be a certain weight, I want to look a certain way, I want this to go on forever. I've got to look after myself so I don't age. All of this sort of nonsense. That's a state of ignorance. Why preserve something which is doomed? Like, it's a complete waste of time. That's right.
Wanting to see, so I get what you're saying.
It's the ego that wants this to keep on going. So it's a bit like your car.
People around me grow up. It's easily even like, I want this to stay.
Yeah.
This wants to see those little ones.
Yes. Yeah, so that's a personal attachment. I want this story to keep on going. Yeah. But that's only if... So you go to the picture theatre and the big screen's on and you're watching the movie and it's getting to the closing credits and you say, I want this movie to keep on going. It's a great... Don't stop the movie, just keep it on going. There's always other movies. So it's a personal attachment which the ego creates to a particular context that it wants to keep playing out forever.
Totally. It's a whole other level.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So there must be some conditions where ego is completely suppressed.
You don't suppress the ego, you dissolve it. You realise the absurdity of it. The ego is, I am such and such. It's a series of I am statements at hats. It's your Facebook profile. When you see that it's complete nonsense, you're completely detached from it. Like, I like good books, I like a nice red wine, blah, blah, blah. It's complete garbage. It doesn't define who you are. It doesn't define anything. Because it's changing second by second. The reason I say that, okay, it might be true. So this moment I do like peanut butter, okay? It's a statement of fact. But in a couple of weeks I might not. I might develop an allergy to it. So it's conditionally accurate. Whereas what the sages are trying to get to, what is that which is permanent throughout all of these sheathings of gross matter? What is permanent no matter what? That is not conditional on anything else. That if you have to make a statement of description of it, you're wrong. That's the hone-in, that's who you are in truth. And you've got to stay with that question, who am I? Are you this body?
So are these young men, their ego, are they full of ego or are they without?
Well, these guys are posting it online, so they're saying, hey, look at me. I wasn't presenting this image as about that. I was saying the sentence really, could you take that risk if you were convinced deep down in your being, this is it? I get one shot at this and then it's over.
Do you think that's how they think?
You'd have to ask them. My experience was that there's no way you can convince me you get one shot at this. The fate of the sons of men and the fate of beasts is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. Indeed, they all have the same breath, and there is no advantage for man over beast, for all is vanity. All go to the same place. All come from the dust and shall return to the dust. So this is the key line here, for all is vanity. It's only the ego that gives you some sort of idiotic nonsense that you're special. All is vanity. Dissolve the ego and you're free of all of this transient stuff. Our fate is the same as everything that walks the earth. What is it that makes you seem that you think you're so special? Why are you so special? Do you think the universe cares about you as an individual? See, this is the nonsense the ego plays around with. But you can turn that upside down. There is another way of saying it. This universe is here for you. This is your universe. Does the universe exist if you're not in it? This universe is self-aware. How is this universe self-aware? Well, you're in it and you're aware. You know of the universe. The universe revolves around you. It exists because you exist. You confirm the existence of the universe. If there is an eternal aspect to your life, why are you struggling? Why is life miserable? So this comes from Tales of Power, Castaneda. You say you need help. Help for what? You have everything needed for the extravagant journey that is your life. The real experience is to be a man, and what counts is being alive. Life is the little detour that we are taking now. Life in itself is sufficient, self-explanatory, and complete. Why do people get miserable? Why is there depression? Why are all of these things? I think it's because you're missing the point. You're attached to the wrong thing. It's sort of like you're obsessed about the car when you're not the car. You can get a new car. Aging and dying is good because you get born in a new body and it's brand new, you know, and you can wreck that one as well. So what endures? Is there an aspect to you which endures? Well, it can't be the body. It can't even be the universe, because we know the universe will expand and all the stars will burn out and it will probably collapse back into nothingness. So not even the universe can endure. But you're missing the point. You're missing the content of consciousness and not the consciousness. Consciousness or awareness is the thing that is persistent throughout everything. It's the only vehicle that gives you life or gives you existence. So what does philosophy have to say on this? Trying to lift you all up. Someday you will die. And guess what? You won't be expecting it. And what's more, when it's happening to you, you'll think something else is. Lying on your sickbed, about to breathe your last, you will be assailed by every kind of pain. Your mind will be filled with fears and anxieties, and you will not know where to go or what to do. Only then will you realise you have not practiced well. The skandahas, or aggregates of matter, sensations, conceptions, impulses and consciousness, and the four elements in you will quickly disintegrate, and your consciousness will be pulled wherever your ancient twisted karma leads it. Impermanence does not hesitate. Death will not wait. You will not be able to extend your life by even a second. How many thousand more times will you have to pass through the gates of birth and death? If these words are challenging, even insulting, let them be an encouragement for you to change. Practice heroically. Do not accumulate unnecessary possessions. Don't give up. Still your mind and wrong perceptions. Concentrate and do not run after the objects of your senses. Practice diligently. Be determined not to let your days and months pass by wastefully. So the wise encourage us to diligently search for the ultimate truth. What is the ultimate truth? What should we be looking for? So there was a very ancient sage called Astawakra. Now Astawakra was severely physically handicapped. You know, you might say he was, so Ravi Shankar, this is Sri Ravi Shankar. He said, the most unique conversation that has ever taken place on this earth. Now the Astawakra Gita Astawakra was a sage, and the Astawakra Gita is a conversation that was recorded. Some smart guy realised this ancient sage had something special to say and recorded these words. And if you don't read any other book in your life, I would suggest this is the one to study. And you don't read it like a novel, you study it line by line. And this is what the Astawakra Gita has to say. You are not the body, nor is the body yours. You're not the enjoyer nor the doer. You are consciousness itself, ever the witness and free. So go about happily. This is a piece of Emerson's art. And I love this little verse. It was American Indian. From nowhere we came, into nowhere we return. What is life? It is the flash of the firefly in the night. It is the breath of a buffalo in the wintertime. It is the little shadow which runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset. The wonderful thing about consciousness is you will never exhaust it. Your experiences will be many, but you will never exhaust it. And this little life detour that you're having now is just an afterthought, a speck of dust in the eye of consciousness. So don't get too heated up about it, just enjoy it. So what Emerson does is he takes game engine programs that do landscapes and backgrounds for games, and then he inserts imagery into them and then allows them to evolve. And so this can go on forever. Are there any questions?
Lots.
Yeah. We'll start with one. Yes.
Was it a heart attack or a rupture?
I had a ruptured spleen. Yeah. All the symptoms of the heart attack are the same. Yeah. So what I'm saying, that little joke there about, obviously if you're smart and you're having the symptoms of a heart attack, you should seek help. I was having all the symptoms of a heart attack and thought it was no big deal. Yeah. The symptomology was the same. No one knows. I've had every test that they're known to man and no cause was ever identified.
So it hasn't been taken out, it hasn't been sewn together. What kind of shape is it now?
I've got a hematoma about the size of an orange now, so it's shrinking and it's healing. It takes about a year to recover.
So it grows itself back into shape? Or?
Oh, the blood clots and goes solid, and then the body slowly reabsorbs the clot matrix and then it knits itself together, providing it doesn't happen again. I'm good for the next question. After that, I'll have to, put a proviso on it. Yes, Carl.
Just an observation about medical practitioners related to is though she's not ready yet, but my mother had long since finished being a nurse when I was taken up the driveway with a broken leg from running into a car. And she was absolutely no use whatsoever. It was my father, who was more of a mechanic, and the fella who, picked me up and took me up there, whereas she sort of stood there with her hands in her mouth. So
Yes.
be easy on your daughter, it could be.
Yeah. She might be the only one who cares. Yeah. No, I mean, that's a very classic example. We want our medical practitioners to be detached and to be professional, because the ones who are detached, your immediate family, they're so overwhelmed by what's taking place. They often are incapacitated. So a sense of professionalism is a bonus. I was fortunate Genevieve was there because she doesn't care. So she could spot my car. Yeah, that's what she wanted. Yeah. Sorry, way over the back, and then I'll come forward.
It's just full of thoughts. At what point do we stop intervening and allow the process that needs to occur of death, disease, illness, treatment, etc.? I mean, I know it's a wide question, but I find myself thinking, at what point do we say, I accept what's happening to me?
Yes. That's a brilliant question, because they say something like, is it 85, 90% of the entire medical budget is spent in the last few weeks of life. So this artificial prolongation of life costs the society dearly. And then you say, well, what's it all about? Well, it's all about ego, isn't it? What's a cemetery? All those gravestones, they're just monuments to ego. Oh, that was a special person, blah, blah, blah. It's ignoring the truth that we are universal elements. We always have been universal elements. Everything that exists in us existed before and will exist after. So nothing's really been lost. I mean, if you look at death and the corpse is lying there, you're not grieving over the corpse because it's still there. You're grieving over what was lost. What was lost was the individual, the true person, the soul or the spirit or their consciousness or awareness. That's why you're crying. If it was the matter or the body that was important, they're still there, fermenting away, You can't wait to be done with it. So we have this nonsensical idea of preservation of the body at all cost, when that isn't the thing that we actually care about. We care about the soul, the spirit, the awareness. That's the thing we grieve over. We don't grieve over the loss of the body. It's irrelevant.
I think we grieve over experience that we lost and the wisdom.
That's right. Yeah. And we grieve over that loss because we don't think there's another one coming. Yeah.
But the
just want to be guaranteed that the people that you love are with you in the next one.
Yeah, that's right. Again, that's ego too. That is a form of egoism, that I'm special and I will continue to exist. Sorry, I'll go to this lady because she was earlier. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you take that sort of these principles into your veterinary practice when people are freaking out about their animals, dying.
I can be, people do grieve, and my experience is some people grieve over their pets worse than over their partner. And like, some people are quite relieved that their partner's gone, but they're really worried about their pet. So my experience is, people grieve over their pets to an extreme degree. The thing is, around the time of death, and from a philosophical perspective, we're not changing outcomes at all. The outcome is set in stone. If you get born, you will die. That's it. And I think it's an extreme form of ignorance to think that somehow you're going to cheat the system. So then the real question is this all there is? Or what is my purpose? So you have to really start using the higher intellect to actually get to the nuts and bolts of it. If you think you're a body and you've got to just keep having surgery to preserve a certain look, it's just, it's an act of stupidity, really. But that's what this media and this culture sort of dictates of what you should be doing. And it's just gross insanity. Sorry, this lady at the back, and then
About dissolving the ego, but how to achieve it?
Dissolving the ego. The easiest way to dissolve the ego is to meditate. How does that work? Experientially, you discover when you practice meditation that your thoughts just flow. And the practice of meditation is to take your attention or your awareness from the thought and give it an anchor point. Now, if you practice sort of a mindfulness practice, the anchor point can be something from your senses. You can connect to a sense or to a sound. If you practice a mantra meditation, the anchor point can be a mantra, a sound. Or if you recite a spiritual verse like, you are not the body, you are not the enjoyer, you are not the doer, you are consciousness itself, you can make that the anchor point. But all you're really doing is just simply detaching from your thoughts. And you do that as a practice. Over time, the experience is you are not your thoughts. And you have a deep conviction of that because you can change your thoughts. You can select what it is you want to think about. And you know that you're the witness of your thoughts. To whom are your thoughts directed? Who are the thoughts talking to? You realise that you can't be your thoughts because they're talking to you. A bit like a schizophrenic, hearing the voices. Your thoughts are telling you something. Well, you can't be your thoughts. So you get this sense of separation. You realise you're not the body and you're not the mind. And it's an experiential understanding. And as soon as you reach that level of understanding, you realise the ego is a crock of nonsense, which is just a series of thoughts, I am statements. I am special. It's usually I am special. But, hey, I am.
When I came across something the other day when I was reading it, was what I thought interesting. We don't own any of our possessions, we're just a caretaker. They belong to somebody else, or they will in some other form, and eventually they'll belong to somebody else. It helps me throwing out junk.
Absolutely.
So, I suppose you could extrapolate that to the body and the mind that we've got at the moment, the experiences.
Yeah. So, it's ignorance to think you're special. Like, I'll have a glass of water. Water's nice, isn't it? Am I responsible for the water? The universe provides water. I didn't do anything. What is my contribution to the water? The only thing I can do is use it. That's my sum total of my entire contribution is that the universe provides me with water and I'm, selfish enough to drink it. That's it. So the ego that you're special or this body's unique and all this sort of nonsense, it's just an extreme form of ignorance. The universe provides you with everything for free. Doesn't ask for anything in return, gives you all the food, all the water, all the air. This next breath, did I do that? Did I provide the oxygen? Like, what was my contribution to my next breath? Nothing. Like, This idea that you're special or the body's unique and all, it's just an extreme form of ignorance. You're renters of everything. Every single aspect of your existence comes from the universe for free. It says, here you go, breathe. Here you go, digest. Like, what's my contribution to my spleen healing? Nothing. It heals itself.
What about meditation?
Meditation means I don't muck it up. And I'll give you an example. If I cut myself, and whilst it's healing all by itself, which the body knows how to heal, and I go, I wonder how it's coming along, and I pick the scab off. Oh, it's still not going. So every few minutes I pick the scab off and pull it apart to see how the healing's coming along. Then the only thing that you can do in terms of health is muck it up. That's your contribution to your health. You have the capacity to muck it up. Now, what meditation teaches you is to just chill and let it happen. Don't muck it up. Because the body knows how to heal. The body knows how to be healthy. Healthy is your default state if you don't do the stupid thing that your ego is telling you to do that mucks it up. So your process in terms of being healthy is to identify all the silly behaviours that the ego tell you are essential that is mucking up your health. And if you can identify those and just chill and let them go, then you'll be healthy. Sorry?
Would you have a quick, simple word of advice for somebody who suffers from chronic pain? So it's not, like years and years of pain, and it's like an ongoing battle with it, which is quite common.
Whatever you reject causes misery and suffering. Whatever you accept will lead to pleasure. So when it's a state of chronic pain, the thing that is the focus of your attention is how to be free of it. And in doing so, you make it the focus of your attention. The idea is to expand all of the aspects of your existence which are pain-free and make them the sum total and focus of your existence in a very relaxed way. And learn meditation. Meditation will be the key. Most people who experience severe chronic pain devote their every aspect of their being to fighting the pain, seeking every remedy under the sun and seeing every practitioner under the sun and taking every drug under the sun and what have you, which means that they become a pain body and focus totally on pain, when they should be actually looking at every aspect of their existence which doesn't revolve around pain. So, for example, I know I only rated it a 7 or 8, but the pain was as bearable as you could get, and I couldn't care less about it.
Yeah, that's short-lived.
Yeah. It was about 4 days, but yeah, continue. But I know. But yeah, okay. So there are aspects to your existence which are pain-free. Expand those until they're the sum total of your focus. Yeah.
There is a book on that about changing the way the brain thinks, changing neuroplasticity by Lamond.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Can I ask Clive?
Yeah. I don't want to keep you if you want to have your cup of tea. So we're supposed to wind up at 2. So maybe this is the last one.
From my perspective, what you're talking about in being in school, life is fatalistic, and it's how you have this life, and what you do with it is whether you have to keep coming back.
Yes. You can treat this as a unique opportunity to unfathom the mystery of existence. So don't waste a moment of it. I think that's what those Zen masters are saying.
You have to keep coming back until you get it right.
You will keep coming back until you get this lesson. Yeah. So thank you all very much.